In April 2021, St. George's Chapel looked almost abandoned. Britain's pandemic rules allowed only 30 mourners inside for Prince Philip's funeral, and Queen Elizabeth sat alone, masked, beneath the stone arches of Windsor. Among the carefully chosen guests was Penny Knatchbull, known to the family as Penny. She had not replaced any of Philip's 8 grandchildren. All 8 attended. Even so, her presence raised a question the palace never answered. Why did this woman belong at one of the royal family's most private farewells? That final seat proved Penny mattered, though it could not say why, and it points toward 2 older mysteries: a reported intervention by men identifying themselves as MI5 and an alleged affair with Sarah Ferguson's mother. Together they lead into the carefully guarded private world of Prince Philip. To understand that world, we have to start before the palaces and the uniforms. Philip was born on Corfu in 1921, a prince of Greece and Denmark whose titles promised far more security than his childhood ever delivered. His family was forced into exile while he was still an infant. His mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg, later received psychiatric treatment and spent long periods separated from her children. His father, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark, lived largely apart from the family. Philip was passed among relatives, schools, and countries. He learned early that a grand name did not guarantee a home. Gordonstoun, the Scottish school built around discipline and physical endurance, suited part of his character. It rewarded toughness and self-command and had little patience for complaint. The Royal Navy then gave him something even more valuable: a clear purpose. During the Second World War, Philip served with real distinction. He was not merely posing in uniform for photographs. Fellow officers described a sharp, confident officer with genuine professional ability. The young man who emerged from the war was handsome, ambitious, and impatient, with a quick mind and a tongue that could charm one room and wound the next. Then came Princess Elizabeth. Their marriage in 1947 is often described as a romantic rescue or a personal sacrifice. Neither version is complete. Philip renounced his Greek and Danish titles, adopted the name Mountbatten, and entered a British institution that would regulate almost every visible part of his future. His promising naval career effectively ended after Elizabeth became queen, and he lost the freedom to define his own position. Yet he also gained what childhood had denied him: permanence, wealth, influence, a family home, and a place at the center of national life. That distinction matters because hardship can explain pressure without excusing conduct. Philip entered the marriage voluntarily. He knew Elizabeth would probably become sovereign, even if nobody could predict how soon. He was not a helpless prisoner carried through the palace gates, nor was he a penniless nobody, as later arguments sometimes reduce him. He possessed royal blood, valuable connections, and a respected naval record, but little independent security. Whether he was choosing Elizabeth, the future she represented, or both, is hard to say with the confidence either his defenders or his critics would like. The bargain became more restrictive when King George VI died in 1952. Elizabeth was now the monarch, and Philip was the consort required to support rather than reign. The public saw privilege, residences, and ceremonial authority. Privately, he confronted a hierarchy in which his wife outranked him everywhere that mattered. Even the family name became a constitutional struggle. Palace advisors initially preserved Windsor, frustrating Philip's wish for Mountbatten. A later compromise, announced in 1960, allowed descendants without royal styles to use Mountbatten Windsor. He had not lost the issue entirely, but he had learned who controlled the final decision. He nevertheless built a substantial public role. He traveled, chaired organizations, promoted science, industry, conservation, and youth development, and completed thousands of engagements. He was not simply decorative. He also acquired the access of a man positioned beside the sovereign. Private transport, influential friends, and doors that opened without explanation. The same system that limited his official independence expanded his unofficial reach, and that contradiction followed him everywhere. Those who met Philip often remembered energy and humor. Others remembered abruptness, arrogance, and remarks that seemed needlessly cruel. Both impressions could be true. The charm attracted people, and the sharpness warned them not to get too comfortable. For a man living inside relentless ceremony, private mail company offered an escape. In post-war London, one such escape gathered at Wheeler's Fish Restaurant in Soho. It became known as the Thursday Club. The club was organized around the photographer Baron Nahum, rather than founded by Philip, as some later retellings claimed. Its circle included journalists, actors, artists, aristocrats, and naval men who drank, exchanged jokes, and enjoyed a freedom of conversation that could never occur at a palace reception. Philip was a prominent participant. To some observers, the meetings were exactly what they appeared to be: a weekly release from royal formality. To others, they offered something more useful: a room filled with connected men who understood the value of discretion. No surviving membership list can prove what happened during every lunch. A private club is not evidence of adultery, criminality, or blackmail. Yet privacy becomes historically important when the same social network touches a national security crisis. One Thursday Club associate was Stephen Ward, an osteopath and portrait artist with a rare ability to cross social boundaries. He knew ministers and models, aristocrats, and entertainers. And when Ward opened a door, people from separate worlds suddenly found themselves in the same room. Behind one of those doors stood the Profumo affair. Ward treated fashionable clients and drew prominent subjects. He was also a social fixer, although that phrase can imply more than the evidence establishes. There is no proof that he supplied women to Prince Philip, and no responsible account should state that he did. What can be established is social overlap. Ward and Philip inhabited connected circles through the Thursday Club and London's artistic society. That connection became dangerous because Ward later introduced Christine Keeler to John Profumo, Britain's Secretary of State for War. Keeler was also involved with Yevgeny Ivanov, a Soviet naval attaché believed to be working for Soviet intelligence. The scandal, therefore, went far beyond sexual embarrassment. A young woman had access to a senior British minister and a Soviet officer during the Cold War. Profumo initially denied the relationship in Parliament, then admitted that he had misled the House and resigned. His fall damaged the government and turned Ward's contacts into a map that investigators, newspapers, and intelligence officers urgently wanted to read. Prince Philip's name appeared near the edge of that map. It has never been proved that he had a sexual relationship with Keeler or Mandy Rice Davies, nor that he was the mysterious man in the mask from a notorious party story later attached to the scandal. Repetition turned these claims into cultural folklore. But repetition is not corroboration. The narrower and more useful question is why officials appeared so concerned whenever journalists explored Philip's social proximity to Ward. One strand leads to the artist Felix Topolsky. His studio beneath railway arches on London's South Bank attracted actors, writers, politicians, and members of high society. And Topolsky enjoyed conversation and reportedly shared vivid gossip. Yet when asked about Prince Philip, he was said to have refused, declaring that Philip was the one subject he could not discuss. The force of that refusal intrigued investigative journalist Philip Knightley. Knightley later recounted that men identifying themselves as MI5 approached him after questions were asked about Topolsky and Philip. According to his recollection, they wanted to know what Topolsky had said and what the newspaper had learned. That account deserves attention, but it also needs its proper boundary. It is Knightley's testimony about an encounter, not a released intelligence file, proving that MI5 ran a royal cover-up. The men's identities, instructions, and complete purpose remain outside the public record. So what were they protecting? The least dramatic possibility is also the most conventional. Ward's world touched a Soviet intelligence officer, and any connection between that network and the Queen's husband would have demanded a security assessment. Officers might have been tracing vulnerability, not suppressing an affair. A second possibility is reputational protection. Since Philip's name attached to Ward could damage the monarchy even if Philip had done nothing sexual or improper. A third possibility combines both. The palace and security services may have treated royal reputation as part of national stability, making the line between protecting the country and protecting the crown almost impossible to see. Conspiracy language can mislead here. People imagine a secret meeting, a written command, officials agreeing to bury a crime. Institutional protection can be quieter than that. One editor fears a libel case, another fears losing royal access. An official makes a discreet inquiry, and a source stops speaking. Nobody has to issue an order because everyone already understands the preferred outcome. On June 20th, 1963, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sent a cable concerning information passed to the Bureau by American businessman Thomas Corbally. The cable recorded a rumor that Prince Philip had been involved with 2 girls connected to the scandal. Its existence matters because it shows the rumor reached American federal authorities, not because it proves the rumor was true. Intelligence files routinely preserve claims that are incomplete, mistaken, or deliberately planted. A government document proves that somebody reported a story, not that the story happened, and that difference is the hinge on which the entire mystery turns. The British press handled the rumors cautiously. One newspaper referred to a foul allegation involving Philip while avoiding a full description. That kind of vagueness can be read in opposite ways. Perhaps editors wished to reject a baseless story without amplifying it, or perhaps staying vague let them signal that they knew more while remaining inside an invisible boundary. Which reading fits depends less on the printed words than on the pressure surrounding them, and much of that pressure was never documented for public view. Ward's art added another layer. He had drawn portraits of Philip and Princess Margaret. The sketches were not compromising images. They were evidence of access, not evidence of sex. After Ward's downfall and death, later reports said a collection of his portraits was acquired by a buyer whose identity was never publicly disclosed. The royal images then disappeared from ordinary public circulation. That sequence has fed decades of suspicion. Perhaps somebody close to the establishment wanted to remove a visible link between Ward and the royal family. Yet, an innocent explanation is equally possible. Ward's work had become inseparable from scandal, and a private buyer may simply have wanted historically valuable drawings. No public document proves that Buckingham Palace ordered the purchase, that MI5 supplied the money, or that anything hidden inside the portraits threatened the crown. The mystery is real. The most dramatic solution remains unproved. Ward's final days are often distorted as well. During his trial on vice-related charges, he took an overdose before the jury finished deliberating. He was convicted in his absence on 2 counts and died several days later. That timing fed the belief that he had been abandoned, silenced, or sacrificed by powerful people who once enjoyed his company. Writers and legal observers have since criticized his prosecution, but criticism of the case is not evidence that he was murdered, forced to take his life, or eliminated to protect Philip. Still, the optics were devastating. A social intermediary who had moved freely among powerful men became the central villain, while those powerful men stepped back into institutions capable of surviving scandal. Ward did not. Was Philip protected because he carried a dangerous secret, or because even an innocent association with Ward could injure the sovereign? The surviving evidence cannot choose for us. It can only show how urgently the establishment wanted the question contained, and Ward was not the only name orbiting Philip. Across his marriage, Philip was repeatedly linked to actresses, aristocrats, performers, and family friends. Some biographers saw a pattern. Others argued that fame made ordinary friendship impossible. A woman seen laughing with him could become a mistress by morning. Once a reputation forms, every new acquaintance seems to confirm it. Hélène Corday was among the earliest and most persistent names. A Greek-born performer and television personality, she had known Philip since their youth in displaced European royal circles, and their friendship continued after his marriage. Rumors later extended to the paternity of her son, Max Boiseau. Both Corday and Boiseau rejected those claims, and no publicly available genetic evidence or documentary admission has established Philip as his father. The story survives because lifelong intimacy invites narrative temptation, not because the public record settles it. Pat Kirkwood's experience shows the cost of that temptation. She was a celebrated West End performer when reports linked her to Philip after social meetings in London. Kirkwood denied an affair and spent years wanting a clear palace statement that might release her from the rumor. Philip never provided the intervention she hoped for, later dismissing the story as press mythology. The absence of a royal denial protected the palace from prolonged argument, but it left Kirkwood carrying a suspicion she said was false. Royal biographer Sarah Bradford reached a much harsher conclusion. She stated that Philip had affairs and believed the Queen accepted them. Yet other people familiar with palace life, including former private secretary Mike Parker, Lord Charteris, and biographer Giles Brandreth, said they found no convincing proof. Their judgments conflict because access is not the same as evidence. Insiders may know hidden truths, but they may also protect friends, repeat assumptions, or mistake proximity for certainty. Two competing patterns emerge from this. In one, Philip maintained affairs within a class trained to keep private conduct private. In the other, a charismatic man had close female friendships that a scandal-hungry culture kept sexualizing. A third possibility sits uneasily between them. Some allegations may have been true and others false, while palace silence treated every case the same way. That would produce a conspiracy without a meeting, a protective reflex strong enough to shelter both guilt and innocence. Then came the allegation capable of changing how an entire royal wedding looked. In July 1986, Prince Andrew married Sarah Ferguson at Westminster Abbey. The event presented the reassuring picture the monarchy understood so well: uniforms, carriages, cheering crowds, and two families joining beneath public blessing. According to biographer Andrew Loney, however, the father of the groom and the mother of the bride shared a history nobody in the streets could see. Loney alleges that Prince Philip and Susan Barantes had been lovers roughly 20 years earlier. The claim appeared in Loney's unauthorized biography of Andrew and Sarah, entitled. He wrote with certainty, placing Philip and Susan together long before their children's marriage, then returned readers to the wedding carriage, where Philip and Susan sat in public view. It is a powerful image because it turns pageantry into theater. Two alleged former lovers waving to the nation while their children begin a marriage of their own. But a cinematic image is not documentary proof. No letters, photographs, diaries, or admissions independently published to date establish the affair. Loney says his conclusion rests on extensive interviews and sources close to the social world surrounding the Fergusons, and he has defended his reporting against accusations that it is gossip. That gives the allegation a named origin and a biographer willing to stand behind it. It does not make the claim uncontested fact, especially when the principal figures are no longer able to answer it. Ronald Ferguson, Susan's first husband and a polo associate of Philip, provided the most tantalizing supporting voice. In his memoir, The Galloping Major, he recalled that Philip tended to make for the prettiest woman at a dance and found Susan's company more attractive than his own. The remark carries irritation and perhaps suspicion, but it is not a direct statement that Ronald witnessed an affair. It could reflect marital jealousy, social teasing, or knowledge he chose not to state openly. So there are at least three plausible versions. Philip and Susan may have enjoyed a flirtatious friendship, later enlarged into scandal. They may have conducted a relationship known within a small aristocratic circle, but kept from the public, or a genuine secret may have been held by only a handful of people, leaving almost no recoverable trace. The available record cannot rank those possibilities with confidence. That uncertainty makes the wedding scene more gripping, not less. What exactly were the crowds watching? A normal carriage carrying the parents of a bride and groom, or two people performing royal composure over a private history? If the allegation was known inside the family, did Sarah and Andrew know? Did the Queen? Silence lets every version grow, because nobody with direct knowledge has offered a verifiable account. The theory becomes darker when paired with another allegation from Loney's later reporting. He has claimed that Sarah Ferguson was monitored during her troubled marriage to Andrew, including surveillance of her movements and communications. No released MI5 file, police record, or court document publicly confirms that operation, so it has to remain an attributed claim rather than a settled event. Yet the idea fits a broader historical pattern in which the royal household treated uncontrolled publicity as a threat requiring management. If Sarah was watched, the likeliest motives require no exotic personal drama. One is protecting Andrew during a failing marriage. Another is institutional fear that the Duchess might reveal private information or create embarrassment. Either would be troubling if public resources were used without lawful justification. But no evidence supports the more elaborate theory that Philip monitored Sarah to learn what Susan had told her. What it does reveal is the recurring structure of Philip's private mythology, an intimate social world, a suggestive remark, an institution that refuses detailed engagement, then decades of speculation filling the space left behind. With Susan, the allegation is explosive but unverified. With Penny Knatchbull, the facts of closeness are far more visible, even as the nature of that closeness remains uncertain. Penny was born Penelope Eastwood in 1953, the daughter of businessman Reginald Eastwood. She later married Norton and Knatchbull, grandson of Louis Mountbatten and a godson of Prince Philip, which placed her inside an extended family network bound to Philip by loyalty, memory, and grief. She was not, as some online accounts claim, the daughter of Patricia Knatchbull. She entered the Mountbatten family through marriage. Louis Mountbatten's murder by an IRA bomb in 1979 devastated Philip and the wider family. More than a decade later, Penny and Norton suffered a different loss when their 5-year-old daughter, Leonora, died from cancer in 1991. Accounts disagree on the precise type of cancer, so certainty would be careless here. What matters to the documented relationship is that grief became part of the bond between Penny and Philip. Each understood the sudden destruction of a family's emotional center. In 1994, Philip taught Penny carriage driving, a demanding equestrian sport he had taken up after giving up polo. Their shared interest grew into a friendship lasting almost 3 decades. They appeared together at competitions and the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Penny visited the royal estates and became close not only to Philip, but also to the Queen. As Philip aged and stepped back from public life, she remained within the trusted circle around him. That history supports 2 very different readings. The first is straightforward. Penny was a loyal family friend who shared Philip's passion, understood his temperament, and offered companionship without romance. The second allows a more emotionally complex bond, an intimacy deeper than ordinary friendship, perhaps privately central to both of them, without assuming it was sexual. A close relationship can exceed conventional labels without becoming an affair. Yet popular culture dislikes uncertainty. The Crown portrayed Philip and Penny with romantic tension, giving millions of viewers images that felt emotionally persuasive. Former Palace Press Secretary Dickie Arbiter called the portrayal cruel rubbish, while other royal voices insisted the friendship was platonic. A television drama can raise a question, but it cannot serve as evidence for its own answer. Scenes written decades later do not become memories simply because actors performed them convincingly. The Queen's apparent acceptance of Penny adds another source of speculation. Was Elizabeth comfortable because she knew the friendship was innocent? Did she recognize that Penny gave Philip an intellectual and sporting companionship she could not always share? Or did a long royal marriage run on private understandings that outsiders would misread? None of those possibilities proves that Elizabeth knew of or tolerated adultery. Her warmth toward Penny establishes trust, not the terms behind it. Then we return to the funeral. Pandemic restrictions reduced Philip's mourners to 30, creating one of the hardest invitation lists the palace had ever assembled. His 4 children and all 8 grandchildren were present, along with spouses, selected relatives, trusted staff, and Penny. Her place did not mean she had been elevated above excluded grandchildren. It did mean that when ceremony was stripped down to its smallest circle, the family considered her presence appropriate and important. That is extraordinary enough without inventing more. The funeral proves that Penny belonged in Philip's intimate world and that the queen accepted her there. It does not prove she was his mistress. Are we looking at a hidden love, a profound friendship, or our own refusal to believe that a man and a woman can share decades of loyalty without sex? The honest answer stays suspended between a seat everyone saw and conversations nobody heard. The unanswered question is not only what happened between Philip and individual women, it is how so many stories could stay unresolved for so long. Post-war Fleet Street did not need formal censorship to protect the royal family. Editors faced strict libel laws, powerful newspaper proprietors, social relationships with establishment figures, and dependence on palace access. A report might be legally possible, yet professionally ruinous. Sources could withdraw. Invitations could vanish. A proprietor could decide that national interest outweighed a sensational headline. This bred a habit of deference. The monarchy offered continuity after war, imperial decline, and political upheaval, and Elizabeth and Philip's marriage became part of that stabilizing image. To expose an alleged affair by the Queen's husband would not be treated as ordinary celebrity reporting. It could be framed as an attack on the sovereign, the family, and even the country. Editors did not have to admire Philip to fear the consequences of weakening the institution around him. The most effective cover-up may be the one nobody has to order. Imagine the process without a single secret committee. A palace official telephones an editor to express concern. The editor asks lawyers for an impossible level of proof. A reporter's source grows nervous after an official visit. A sketch is bought privately. A rumor is mentioned abroad but described vaguely at home. Each act can be defended on its own. Together, they form a wall. Is that a conspiracy, institutional caution, or simply power operating through shared assumptions? Knightley's account of men identifying themselves as MI5 sits at the center of that dilemma. If they were assessing a Cold War security threat, their interest was legitimate. If they were discouraging lawful reporting about private misconduct, it was reputational protection disguised as security. Perhaps the two motives had merged. In a constitutional monarchy, officials might have believed that scandal surrounding the Queen's husband threatened national stability. That belief would make almost any protective action appear patriotic from inside the system. The same culture may help explain later royal crises, but caution is essential. Philip's rumored conduct cannot be used to prove why Charles's marriage failed or why Andrew made his choices. Children do not inherit scandals as simple moral genes. Families do, however, transmit habits. What may be spoken, what must be denied, who receives protection, and who absorbs blame. If secrecy served the institution for decades, younger royals may have learned that reputation mattered more than disclosure. Public frustration also reflects money and accountability. Taxpayers supported royal duties and security while royal finances mix public and private elements. That does not make every intimate act public property. It does justify scrutiny if state officials or publicly supported institutions concealed personal behavior. The question is whether public power protected Philip from accountability unavailable to ordinary people. Even his will became part of the mystery. Following royal practice, a court ordered it sealed for 90 years. That decision limits public access and understandably encourages suspicion about money, beneficiaries, and private relationships. But the sealed will proves none of those theories. It may contain nothing relevant to Penny, Susan, secret children, or alleged affairs. Its importance is more subtle. One possible historical source will remain beyond reach for most people now debating the story. Silence does not always indicate guilt. Sometimes it protects privacy, grief, or innocent people from sensational claims. But sustained silence also prevents false stories from being decisively challenged and true ones from being responsibly tested. That may be the palace system's deepest failure. By refusing detail in almost every case, it created the perfect climate for rumor. The public was left to choose between reverence and conspiracy because the evidence needed for a more precise judgment stayed locked away. The near-empty chapel at Windsor therefore returns us to the beginning. Penny's presence is confirmed. Her long friendship with Philip is confirmed. His social overlap with Stephen Ward is documented. The FBI recorded a rumor about him during the Profumo scandal. None of those facts establishes an affair. None proves a coordinated MI5 operation to hide one. Other claims remain attributed rather than settled. Andrew Loney alleges that Philip and Susan Brontes were lovers, and later reported that Sarah Ferguson was monitored. Biographers, such as Sarah Bradford, believe Philip had affairs. Their reputations and sources make the allegations worthy of examination. They do not replace missing documents, direct admissions, or independent corroboration. Several dramatic conclusions remain unproved. There is no established sexual relationship with Christine Keeler or Mandy Rice Davies. Penny has not been proved to be Philip's mistress. The Queen has not been shown to have knowingly accepted a succession of affairs, and no public file demonstrates an organized MI5 cover-up directed from the palace. What the record does reveal is a culture skilled at protecting ambiguity. It guarded access, controlled response, and let damaging questions age without answers. It's possible the conspiracy, if there was one, was never about hiding a single affair, but about preserving a royal marriage so essential that no damaging question was ever allowed a clear answer. Do you believe the silence protected a marriage, a monarchy, or a secret that has still not surfaced? Share your view below. If you value evidence-led royal documentaries, like this video and subscribe to the Palace Circle. Thank you for watching. Power rarely erases the truth. It just has a talent for making the truth arrive too late.